Vessel of Hatred added some features, but are we actually ready for what comes next? The real question isn't what the first expansion changed, but whether it actually matters. And I know what some of you will say, the Forbad expansion didn't change anything, Vessel of Hatred was trash. But was it? Let's not talk about the campaign, you may like it or not. I personally played through it several times and maxed out Nahantu itself twice. Let's talk about the features and mechanics. The most important change was the change in difficulty levels and the leveling. The old progression system had two standard difficulties, Adventurer and slightly more difficult Veteran. Then a capstone dungeon with the curator at around level 50, which unlocked access to T3, Nightmare, and another capstone dungeon with Elias, which unlocked access to T4, Torment, where we leveled the character up to level 100. Currently, we have 4 standard difficulties, Normal, Hard, Expert, and Penitent, followed by 4 Torment levels, which are unlocked through the pit. These changes affected everyone, not just Vessel of Hatred owners, but this change is associated with the launch of the first expansion. And this is where the problem starts. Capstone dungeons had their own atmosphere. Trying to get to the higher tier of the world when we are very underleveled was more fun. Many players think that leveling became much more tedious after the changes, with a very brutal leveling curve, especially for Paragon levels, and the whole system is identical to the one in Diablo 3. In addition, it turns out that with the new Lord of Hatred expansion, we'll get further additional Torment levels, so if we assume that changing the progression system with Vessel of Hatred was a mistake in this case, the creators continue to make it. Speaking of systemic changes, there were also changes to crafting. The first expansion introduced runes and rune words, which were disappointing for many players because they didn't work the same way they did in Diablo 2. The introduction of runes also changed the experience of crafting mythics for many players. This might not sound like a big deal, but it actually changed a lot. Previously, you could craft a mythic of your choice with only 2 sparks and gold, but now you can either craft a random mythic with 2 sparks, or you need specific runes too if you want a specific mythic item. This change was, of course, the most painful for players without the expansion, as they were stripped of the ability to craft a mythic of their choice, and without access to runes, they were left with the option of crafting only random mythic uniques. Another big addition in Vessel of Hatred was the new Spiritborn class. And while new classes are usually exciting, this one launched in a pretty strange state because most players expected to get some kind of holy class. And just like in the first season with the new expansion, Season 6, of course most players played Spiritborn and the bugged evade build conquered all servers. Now I have the impression this class is a bit forgotten and less liked. Alongside that, we also got mercenaries. And yes, they can't be helpful, like Subo, who lets you see monsters on the minimap, but very often we forget about them completely when we start a new season. There were plenty of times I only remembered mercenaries existed when I was already on T3 or T4. Maybe it's actually a good thing they don't play such a big role, although some players might be bothered by this, as well as the fact that we can't equip them with gear. We also got new legions that are significantly different from those in base game, and of course Helltide and Nahantu. Unfortunately, despite the beautiful world design, and this is something I noticed while playing, it feels like unless there's some reason or event activity in Nahantu, we don't spend much time there, and Helltides are extremely rare. Interestingly, dungeon design also changed because of players' feedback. It seems developers learned from the base version of the game that players don't want objectives in dungeons, so the new dungeons in the Vessel of Hatred are completely open and player can explore freely or go straight to the boss. But the biggest question was always the endgame. Vessel of Hatred didn't really solve that problem. However, 2 new activities were added, Undercity and Dark Citadel. And while Undercity is useful for target farming, Obducite, runes, boss mats, and even items, including mythic items, Dark Citadel is the elephant in the room. The idea of co-op only mode was controversial from the start, as most players play solo, not to mention everyone simply prefers to have a choice. Fortunately, aside from transmogs, there's nothing there that can't be found elsewhere in Sanctuary. And by the way, if you're interested in farming transmogs from the Citadel, I have a video about it on my channel. I'll link it in the description. Dark Citadel is a mode that some people enjoy, others hate, and still others enjoyed it at first only to find it boring or even irritating over time. Currently, it's rather desolate mode, as most players have already acquired all the transmogs and simply abandoned the Citadel. Perhaps the problem lies in the design itself, the relatively long wings, the final bosses with force immunity and phases, or perhaps simply the fact that the mode doesn't allow for solo play. You could say Dark Citadel is like the first expansion's PvP, empty and forgotten, and many of us would probably love to see a remake of both of these activities. Fortunately, Lord of Hatred doesn't announce any activities requiring co-op and promises something of an endgame, war plans. Could Blizzard be drawing lessons from the first expansion? Vessel of Hatred didn't fix Diablo 4, but it showed the direction the game is heading. It made one thing clear: Diablo 4 is still evolving, and the next expansion will decide if it was worth it. Which changes from the first expansion were your most and least successful, and what are your greatest hopes for the Lord of Hatred expansion? Let me know. Leave a like, subscribe, and happy hunting.